Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. It's Democracy apparently. Hope you're all well. Well, today we're going to concentrate on those two slime bags, Hermer and Starmer. The two slime bags that relentlessly pursued our war heroes and veterans to prosecute them for war crimes that they had no evidence whatsoever. But it still didn't stop them. Stick with it to the end because some of the things that you're going to learn will shock you. Our veterans put their lives on the line for the country. They faced enemies abroad only to come home and find a new enemy waiting in the courtroom. Keir Starmer and his colleagues claim they were just following orders when they helped prosecute hundreds of British soldiers. The cab rank rule, they called it. Sounds official, right? Just another day at the office. But what if that was a convenient lie? Take a look at this.
Lord Hermer, Starmer's closest ally, pursued British Army veterans in one of the most notorious witch hunts in military history. The Telegraph's revelation about the Attorney General follows an investigation where we analysed more than 25,000 documents. It shows he played a key role in a case that left decorated war heroes facing bogus accusations of murder and assault. Hermer, or Lord Hermer as he's now known, pressed for compensation of hundreds of thousands of pounds, despite mounting evidence that the clients were lying. Sir Keir Starmer is already under pressure for his treatment of army veterans who fought in Northern Ireland. Now we can reveal that his Law Chief supported Iranian-backed terrorists against British troops for years. Let's get into the timeline. In May 2004, the British troops fighting in Iraq were ambushed by around 100 Iraqi members of the Mahdi army, an Iranian-backed Shia military. The heavily outnumbered soldiers fought off that ambush in a heroic victory that became known as the Battle of Danny Boy. But in the weeks afterwards, conflicting reports emerged. Iraqi families claimed that their relatives had actually been captured alive before being assaulted and murdered at a nearby British base. And a number of surviving Iraqi prisoners alleged that they were mistreated during questioning. One man called Quda al-Swadi claimed that his nephew had been executed. These individuals began to be represented by British law firms Lee Day and public interest lawyers. The allegations culminated in a dramatic press conference. A lawyer, Phil Shiner, of Public Interest Lawyers, can be seen speaking here.
British soldiers may well have been responsible for the executions of up to 20 Iraqi civilians, the torture of many of these 20 before death, the torture of 9 other survivors, and horrific bodily mutilations prior to some of the executions.
What they said was a big deal. It forced the government to launch an inquiry into the false allegations, called the al-Swadi Inquiry. Documents uncovered by the Telegraph show Lord Hermer advised the solicitors behind the press conference. He said, "Do you need to be slightly more explicit in the press release about evidence raising serious concerns of execution of prisoners in order to generate sufficient interest, or will the Today interview naturally bring in the punters later that morning?" But he was aware that the allegations might not be true. In an email, he advised the solicitors to keep wiggle room if the killings did not in fact happen. Let's just take that in for a moment. The now Attorney General, the government's principal legal advisor, knew there were credibility concerns over the legitimacy of serious allegations against British troops, and yet he continued to pursue them anyway. Let's dig back into the timeline. We can see in the year Lee Day started to look into the claims, the firm allegedly received a document that could have seriously undermined their legal case. It reveals that the captured Iraqis were in fact members of the Mahdi army, not innocent civilians, as the firm had claimed. In plainer terms, they were terrorists. This was a really important document, but lawyers at Lee Day say they only became aware of its significance in August 2013. The legal firm were investigated over their role in the Al-Swadi claims, but were found to have done nothing wrong. Now, fast forward to 2008. The documents show that by this time, Lord Hermer is working with Lee Day and assigned to the case, pursuing civil damage claims for the Iraqis involved. What's shown here are the accounts given by the Iraqis themselves. You can see here at the bottom, a paralegal left notes that raise questions over the information, such as, why ride to a remote location for a 2-minute shopping expedition and dismiss your taxi? Or this quote, is it likely that a farmer would not recognise the farmer's fields adjacent to his own? We can see then that the press conference occurs, putting pressure on the government to launch an inquiry. By 2009, the public inquiry was set up by the then Labour government. Now, we can see that by February 2013, Lord Hermer advised some of the Al-Swadi claimants on a settlement offer from the MOD. Crucially, even though he knows there are problems with the evidence, Lord Hermer is advising the claimants to make a higher counteroffer. Just 1 month later, we can see the lawyers are getting worried about the way it's going at the public inquiry. Despite this, Lord Hermer continues to represent the Iraqis. Later in the year, it gets even worse as the detainee list, showing that some of the captured Iraqis were members of the Mahdi army, is presented publicly at the inquiry. The following year, the inquiry exonerated the British troops and found the Al-Swadi claimants had made allegations that were the product of deliberate and calculated lies. But did these deeply concerning revelations lead Lord Hermer to reconsider his decision to help sue British soldiers? No. In fact, we can reveal that in 2015, Hermer was still insisting their detention claim was viable as a matter of law and regardless of credibility issues. Even if some of their accounts lack credibility, they were detained and so could potentially claim damages for their detention under the Human Rights Act. So we've established a timeline of events and rifled through files to reveal that Lord Hermer continued to represent the Iraqis despite the impact of the claims on British troops. But it's important to remember that among all of these documents, facts and statements, at the centre of this case are real people hurt by the allegations. And a lawyer representing the soldiers says that Lord Hermer should face an investigation himself.
So, as you've seen, the truth is much darker. What if they weren't just taking the next case off the rank, but were hand-picking them based on the words of terrorists? Today, we're exposing the cab rank lie that ruined veterans' lives. The cab rank rule sounds simple enough. It means a barrister, like a London cabbie, is supposed to take the next case that comes their way without picking and choosing. It's a principle designed to guarantee everyone gets a fair hearing. Lord Hermer, now the Attorney General, and Keir Starmer, Prime Minister, have hidden behind this rule to defend their past actions. They insist it was just a professional duty. But that's not what the facts show. This wasn't about obligation. It was about choice, and the choices they made unleashed a witch hunt that shattered the lives of British heroes. Now let's be clear, top barristers like Lord Hermer weren't sitting by the phone waiting for a case. They're inundated, and when you decide to work pro bono or for free, the cab rank rule absolutely does not apply. You get to choose your clients. Former Minister Robert Jenrick said it best. When Hermer's cab arrived, he chose its passengers. And who did he choose to pick up? His firm represented clients in the notorious Al-Swadi inquiry, an investigation built entirely on accusations from Iraqi claimants. He did this as evidence was piling up that the stories were fabricated. At the same time, Keir Starmer was giving free legal advice to groups like Amnesty International, which were pushing for new investigations into our soldiers based on those same shaky claims. And this wasn't a random fair, it was hand-picked crusade. Johnny Mercer, the former Veterans Minister, put it bluntly, saying Starmer believes in prosecuting British soldiers so much that he insisted on doing it for free. How shocking is that? That's from the man who only the other day said that he loves this country so much. Well, that is utter rubbish. Probably just another lie from Starmer. So where did these devastating allegations even come from? The Al-Swedi inquiry was launched to look into claims that British soldiers had murdered and tortured Iraqis at a base called Camp Breadbasket in 2004. The accusations were explosive and were pushed relentlessly. But the whole thing was built on a foundation of lies. The official inquiry report later concluded that the serious allegations were entirely the product of deliberate lies, reckless speculation and ingrained hostility. A Telegraph investigation discovered that some claimants were linked to the Mahdi army, an Iranian-backed militia. Critics didn't see them as innocent civilians but as terrorists on the make. The entire scandal was masterminded by the now convicted and disgraced solicitor Phil Shiner. He was struck off in 2017 for professional misconduct that included paying middlemen to find clients in Iraq. In late 2024, Shiner finally pleaded guilty to fraud for his actions. This was the source they used to tarnish the names of British soldiers. The direct result of all this was the Iraqi Historic Allegations Team, or IHAT. It ended up costing the taxpayer nearly £60 million, churning through thousands of allegations and ultimately led to 0 convictions, but it was far from harmless. It unleashed what Johnny Mercer has described as a witch hunt that he has spent years trying to stop. Soldiers had already been cleared by military police, were dragged through the mud all over again, careers were destroyed, marriages fell apart, and the mental health of our veterans was shattered. Imagine serving your country with honour, only to spend a decade of your life fighting lies spun by your enemy's people, who want to see you ruined. One decorated hero, cleared of murder twice, suffered a stroke from the sheer stress of being investigated again. That is the devastating human cost. Downing Street obviously has denied the claims. A spokesman said Starmer's role was just to assist the courts on points of law, not to represent the Iraqi families directly. But the result was the same: years of torment for the people who served our country. The Al-Swedi inquiry eventually cleared British soldiers of the worst accusations, but by then the damage was done. Is this what justice looks like? Is this how a country should treat its defenders? If you believe our veterans were treated with profound injustice, don't let this story fade away. Share this video so more people can learn the truth behind the cab-rank lie. The argument that this was all just another day at the office simply doesn't stand up to scrutiny. The evidence points to a deliberate choice to go after soldiers based on the lies of their enemies. It was a choice that empowered a fraudulent lawyer like Phil Shiner, wasted millions of taxpayers' money, and most unforgivably destroyed the lives of the very people who risk everything for our freedom. They were owed a debt of gratitude. Instead, they got years of suspicion and pain. We have to demand better. We have to make sure this never ever happens again. So what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. If you're not a subscriber, please do consider becoming a subscriber. It doesn't cost you anything, and it just allows the channel to be able to keep producing the sort of content that you're enjoying right now. Thanks for watching, enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you in the next video.